Picture this. Barron Trump walks into a small-town diner, his MAGA hat like a beacon in a sea of leather jackets and gruff faces. The air crackles with tension. But what unfolds next isn't what you'd expect. As a confrontation brews, we witness a moment that challenges everything we thought we knew about judgment, empathy, and the power of honest conversation. Get ready for a story that'll make you question your own assumptions. The bell above the diner door chimed, and all eyes turned to the lanky figure stepping inside. Barron Trump's presence was like a glitch in the matrix of this small-town eatery. His crisp white shirt and neatly combed hair stood in stark contrast to the sea of leather jackets and weathered faces that filled the booths. The red MAGA hat perched atop Barron's head might as well have been a flashing neon sign. Conversations died mid-sentence as patrons stared, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed hostility. A group of bikers at a corner table exchanged meaningful glances, their expressions hardening. Barron hesitated for a moment, clearly sensing the shift in atmosphere, but with a deep breath he squared his shoulders and made his way to the counter. The click of his polished shoes against the worn linoleum floor seemed unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. That's when it happened. A chair scraped against the floor, and a mountain of a man rose from the biker's table. His arms, covered in faded tattoos, bulged beneath a sleeveless denim vest. He lumbered towards Barron, each heavy step punctuated by the jingle of chains on his boots. "Kid," the biker's gravelly voice cut through the tension. "Do you even know what that hat stands for?" The challenge hung in the air. Other patrons held their breath, expecting the worst. But Barron surprised them all. He turned slowly, meeting the biker's gaze with unexpected calm. "I wear it because it means something personal to me," Barron replied, his voice steady despite the slight tremor in his hands. "But maybe we see it differently." The biker's eyebrows shot up, clearly not expecting such a measured response. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth as he looked Barron up and down. "Personal?" he snorted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What do you know about struggles?" His buddies at the table chuckled, fueling the growing tension. Something flickered in Barron's eyes, a mix of hurt and determination. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. The diner collectively held its breath, waiting to see if the privileged kid would crumble under the pressure. But Barron surprised them once more. He took a deep breath, his shoulders rising and falling with the motion. When he spoke again, there was a new weight to his words. "You're right," he admitted, his voice quiet but clear. "I've lived a privileged life, but it doesn't mean I don't have challenges. Let me tell you about something most people don't know." The diner fell into an eerie silence. Even the cooks in the back peered out from the kitchen, spatulas frozen mid-flip. All eyes were on Barron as he began to speak, his words about to shatter every preconception in the room. But what Barron said next caught everyone off guard. The diner fell silent as Barron's words hung in the air. His voice, soft yet steady, carried a weight that seemed to press against everyone's chests. "Most people see the fancy clothes and the big house," he began, his eyes fixed on a point just beyond the biker's shoulder. "But they don't see the constant eyes watching, judging every move." The biker's smirk began to fade, replaced by a furrowed brow. Barron continued, his words painting a picture of a life under constant scrutiny. He spoke of sleepless nights before public appearances, of cruel comments dissecting his appearance online, of the pressure to be perfect when the world was waiting for him to fail. "I can't even go to the mall without security," Barron admitted, a hint of longing in his voice. "Making real friends? That's nearly impossible when everyone wants something from you or your family." The bikers exchanged glances, their tough exteriors beginning to crack. One of them, a woman with silver streaks in her hair, leaned forward, her eyes softening. Barron's shoulders relaxed slightly as he sensed the shift in the room. He described the challenge of forming his own identity while living in the shadow of his father's legacy. "Everyone has an opinion about who I should be," he said, his voice growing stronger. "But I'm just trying to figure out who I am, like any other kid." The burly biker who had confronted Barron earlier shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His earlier mockery had evaporated, replaced by a grudging respect for the young man's honesty. As Barron spoke about his dreams, to make a difference, to be seen for himself rather than his last name, the atmosphere in the diner transformed. The hostility that had greeted him dissipated, replaced by a shared sense of understanding. "I know I'm lucky in a lot of ways," Barron concluded, meeting the biker's gaze directly. "But that doesn't mean it's always easy. I'm just trying to find my way, same as anyone else." A heavy silence settled over the diner as Barron's words sank in. The biker who had first confronted him cleared his throat, his gruff exterior softening. "You've got guts, kid," he admitted, a note of respect in his voice. "Didn't expect that." Barron offered a small, genuine smile in return. For a moment, the unlikely group, the privileged son and the rough-and-tumble bikers who found themselves connected by the universal struggle of self-discovery and the weight of others' expectations. But the real shock came when the biker removed his own hat. The biker's calloused fingers gripped the brim of his cap, hesitating for just a moment. "You think you're the only one carrying a weight, kid?" he growled, his eyes locking with Barron's. "Let me show you something about judging books by their covers." With a swift motion, the biker pulled off his leather cap. Beneath it was a weathered military cover, its fabric faded and frayed at the edges. A hush fell over the diner as patrons leaned in, trying to catch a glimpse of this unexpected revelation. Barron's eyes widened, his composure momentarily shaken. The biker's hardened exterior seemed to soften as he ran a thumb over the embroidered insignia on the cap. "3 tours in Afghanistan," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Fought for the very freedoms we're arguing about right now." He paused, his gaze distant. "Saw things no man should see. Lost brothers. Came back to a country that didn't feel like home anymore." The other bikers nodded solemnly, a shared understanding passing between them. The woman with silver streaks in her hair placed a hand on the biker's arm, her touch gentle but firm. "We all got stories, kid," she said, turning to Barron. "Take Mac here. Looks like he'd snap you in half, right?" She gestured to a mountain of a man with tattoos covering his arms. "He runs the biggest animal shelter in the county. Saved more lives than you can count." Mac ducked his head, a hint of red creeping up his neck. "Just doing what's right," he mumbled. One by one, the bikers began to share their stories. A former teacher who now mentors at-risk youth. An ex-con who turned his life around and now counsels prisoners. Each revelation chipped away at the wall of preconceptions that had stood between them and Barron. As the stories flowed, the atmosphere in the diner transformed. The hostility that had greeted Barron melted away, replaced by a warmth of shared humanity. Even the other patrons, who had been watching the scene unfold with wary fascination, began to relax. Barron listened intently, his earlier nervousness replaced by genuine curiosity. He asked questions, not as the son of a president, but as a young man eager to learn. The bikers, in turn, found themselves seeing beyond the MAGA hat to the person beneath. Before long, laughter echoed through the diner. Barron shared a story about a disastrous attempt at making pancakes that had nearly burned down the White House kitchen. The bikers roared with laughter, slapping the table and wiping tears from their eyes. "Kid, you're all right," the first biker said, clapping Barron on the shoulder. "Guess we both learned something today about not judging too quick." Barron grinned, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'm glad I came in here," he said. "Thank you for sharing your stories with me." As the unlikely group bonded, the other diners couldn't believe their eyes. As the scene between Barron and the bikers unfolded, the rest of the diner seemed to hold its collective breath. Elderly couples paused mid-bite, their forks hovering in the air. A group of teenagers stopped scrolling on their phones, eyes wide with disbelief. The unexpected harmony between these polar opposites was a sight to behold. At a corner booth, a middle-aged woman leaned towards her husband, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I'd see the day," she murmured, shaking her head in amazement. Her husband nodded, his brow furrowed as he wrestled with his own preconceptions. Across the room, a young waitress paused in her duties, captivated by the scene. She'd served hundreds of customers, but never had she witnessed such a transformation. The tension that had filled the air when Barron entered had dissipated, replaced by a warmth that seemed to radiate from the unlikely group. As the conversations between Barron and the bikers continued, other diners began to stir. At first, it was just hushed whispers and meaningful glances, but soon, emboldened by the example before them, other tables began to engage in their own discussions. A college student with dyed blue hair turned to the elderly couple next to her. "What do you think about all this?" she asked, gesturing towards Barron and the bikers. The old man, who had initially frowned at her appearance, hesitated before answering. "Well," he began slowly, "I suppose it goes to show you can't always judge a book by its cover." Near the counter, the diner's owner, Joe, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of pride and wonder. He'd seen his fair share of arguments and tension in this place over the years, but this was something entirely new. "In all my years," he mused to no one in particular, "I never thought I'd see a day like this." As the atmosphere in the diner shifted, Barron seemed to come alive. The nervous, guarded young man who had walked in was gone. In his place was someone confident and engaging, moving between groups with surprising ease. He listened intently to stories, asked thoughtful questions, and even cracked a few jokes that had people laughing. A businessman who had been furiously typing on his laptop looked up, drawn into the moment. He caught the eye of a construction worker a few tables over, and they shared a smile of mutual understanding. Walls were coming down all around the diner, not just at Barron's table. By the time the lunch rush had passed, the diner had transformed. The air buzzed with conversation, punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter. People who had entered as strangers were leaving as acquaintances, some even exchanging phone numbers. As Barron gathered his things, preparing to leave, the change in the diner was palpable. The initial hostility had given way to a sense of community, of shared humanity. It was as if everyone had been reminded of a simple truth they'd forgotten, that beneath our labels and assumptions, we're all just people trying to make our way in the world. The burly biker who had first confronted Barron stood up, his expression serious. As Barron turned to say his goodbyes, the biker cleared his throat. "Kid," he began, his voice gruff but sincere. "Before you go, there's something I need to tell you." The biker's weathered face softened as he looked at Barron. "Kid, you taught me something today," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. "Maybe we're not as different as we think." Barron nodded, a mixture of surprise and gratitude in his eyes. As they shook hands, the diner fell silent once more. The image was striking. A young man in crisp clothes and a MAGA hat, clasping hands with a leather-clad biker. It was a moment that defied expectations and challenged assumptions. The encounter served as a powerful reminder of the transformative power of open dialogue. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, this unlikely connection demonstrated that common ground often lies beneath the surface of our differences. As Barron left the diner, the atmosphere had shifted. The initial tension had given way to a sense of shared humanity. It was a small but significant victory for understanding in a divided world. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.